Good morning, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. I hope you've had a great week, and we are going to talk about some tropics and some severe weather and flooding. And I got woken up a little earlier this morning, so you're probably wondering why why I'm on here so early. We're getting a thunderstorm here in the Raleigh area that's really getting noisy, and Mother Nature giving us a pretty good deluge here with flash flood warnings in effect. I told it not to. I said if the boats are rocking, don't come and knocking, and didn't listen to me. So anyway, let's talk about tropics first, and we've got something new to talk about here. A named storm, subtropical storm Dawn, kind of a junk fish storm, but out there between Bermuda and the Azores. This is actually our fifth storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, and we're off to our fourth busiest start. This is the fourth earliest that we've seen a storm form so early in the season. According to Colorado State expert Philip Klotzbach, the only years that saw earlier development were 2021, 2020, which of course we don't forget, that was the record year, and 2005, which was the previous record year. We're not going to probably set a record this year, but we are off to a very fast start. That is certainly something that I have been talking about here in my preview back in May and June, that we're going to have a very busy start to the hurricane season, despite El Nino. Now, just because we have a lot of names being used doesn't mean that we're seeing a destructive year at this point, but I think in August things are going to get a lot busier. So this is the water vapor image from Tropical Tidbits. This is Dawn here, middle of nowhere, central Atlantic. Bermuda's right here, so it's well east of Bermuda, well southeast of Atlantic Canada, and well west of the Azores. We do have a Category 2 hurricane in the Pacific. This is Calvin, and behind it, another area that we're going to be watching in a few days for potentially another Pacific storm, Dora. So we would be tied in names, at least, between the Atlantic and the Pacific, probably around this time next week. Now, we did have an unnamed storm in January that formed out here. That's why this is actually our fifth storm. That unnamed storm in January did not end up getting a name. They gave it that title afterwards, doing research. I would not be shocked if the storm Memorial Day weekend that hit the Carolinas, they reanalyzed and saw that that was a subtropical storm. So it's quite possible this might even be number 6, but you got to draw the line somewhere, and I'm going to leave it up to the Hurricane Center to do their jobs and figure that part out. The rest of the Atlantic is pretty quiet right now. We do have quite a few waves coming off of Africa, but very dry air and wind shear in place is going to keep any of these from developing. There is a very slight chance we see something weak develop next week around this time, but I think the chances are even starting to drop off from now. So after dawn, we could be pretty quiet until getting into August. So the next couple of weeks, still not a whole lot happening, maybe a fish storm here and there, but no immediate threats to bigger land masses here like the US, Central America, and the Caribbean. Now, I think in August, we are going to see what's called a CCKW. That is a Kelvin wave, which is going to enhance activity. And we may see a burst of much more activity coming off of Africa by the time we get into the first and second weeks of August. A little soon to try to predict anything at that point, but it does look like we're heading into a busier pattern, and we're going to be talking about many more storms heading into the month of August and especially early September. Here's a look at Dawn. You can see definitely not a very big storm system, lacking central convection, but does have convection with it. It's embedded within this larger trough. You can see that on the water vapor imagery. Because it is attached to the trough, it is not a fully tropical system. Water temperatures are marginal. And in fact, it may actually be at its healthiest for the next few days. It may start to weaken slowly over the next couple of days. But really no threat to land. I'm showing it to you because we've got to have something to talk about here. But you can see this is the center. All the thunderstorms are pretty much off to the east. The center of the circulation is still on the cool side, and that's why it's not fully tropical. And it probably isn't going to get to that point either. Here's a look at where the system's going to go. A 50-mile-per-hour storm right now drifting northward. It is going to make a right turn later this weekend and then head southeast. It will probably weaken some, but should remain subtropical, at least I think. Now, if it does hang around here later next week, a couple of models do try to show it becoming tropical briefly towards Wednesday and Thursday. But again, it's not affecting anybody except for shipping lanes. The Azores are over here. It's going to be too far from them. Bermuda's over here. There's just no chance this is going to come back and affect us in the U.S. I mean, the longitude is 46. So pretty classic El Nino, where we see a lot of action out in here and not a whole lot closer to the U.S. And we really hope it stays that way. Now, on the Pacific side of things, we may have something impacting the U.S. This is Category 2 Hurricane Calvin. And you're thinking, well, how's that going to affect the U.S.? Well, Hawaii's out there, and this is aimed at Hawaii. However, I do not think we're dealing with a hurricane by the time it gets there next week. You can see on the infrared a very well-developed eye here. Category 2, 105-mile-per-hour storm may become a major hurricane today. And then in the next 24 hours, it is going to run out of storm fuel and run into cooler waters. So we will see gradual weakening. Major hurricane point on the map here. Let me refresh this, see if we have I guess we don't have a new advice. Oh, Hawaii time. Okay, so 5 Eastern is 11 Hawaii time. And you can see it will be a major hurricane here this afternoon into this evening, and then gradually weakening over the weekend, and should be a tropical storm over cooler waters east of Hawaii here by the end of the weekend. And this, while it looks like it's going to go right at Hawaii, and it probably will, is going to be a weekend remnant low by the time it gets there by Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Hawaii time. So nothing to be scared about, but could enhance the wind and the rainfall, especially on the Big Island here towards the middle of next week. So if you do have travel plans to Hawaii, just keep an eye on it. I don't think it's going to be extremely disruptive, but maybe something to keep an eye on. Maybe we get a tropical storm watch in here, but I don't think it's anything worse than that. You can see things are going to level off here in about 12 hours, and then we should be back to a Category 1 hurricane by the middle to second part of this weekend, and then a tropical storm by next week. There are a couple of outliers, but I think over the cooler waters, we're likely talking a tropical storm by Monday and Tuesday of next week, and maybe a remnant low even by Wednesday or Thursday. All right, let's take a look at models. Again, they just kind of give us a potential look into the future. From tropicaltidbits.com, you can see this is Dawn right here. A big storm moving into Ireland, major winds hitting the British Isles as well. That is not tropical. And then we've got a big storm as well over central Canada with low pressure ahead of it. That's what's caused the severe weather we've seen in the Great Lakes and Northeast and across Ontario. We had tornadoes in the Ontario and Quebec areas yesterday as well. So not just limited to the U.S. side of things. That storm is not going to be tropical. It's just going to spin and weaken. We will see Dawn weakening here some as it drifts northward. See how the pressures are rising? That indicates a weakening storm system, but it does still have a circulation here in 2 days. Then it is expected to turn and may try to re-strengthen. The GFS typically over forecast strengthening here. 999 would be a little stronger than it is now. This is in about 5 days here by next Wednesday, maybe even 996. Here are the Azores, but then looks like it's going to stall and start weakening by the time it gets close to the Azores. So there's a slight chance right now, and I know probably nobody's even watching from the Azores, but if you are, slight chance this could impact you as a tropical storm or tropical depression next weekend, but very uncertain future here. I've seen a lot of different solutions here. The good news is that the Gulf and the Atlantic side of things remain quiet over the next 10 days. I don't see any kind of development. We are seeing some waves coming off of Africa, but models continue to trend weaker here. They're just showing it being a little too hostile to get anything to go. It is a very small chance we see a depression or low-end storm here by next weekend. I don't think it's super likely. And that trend continues here through the end of the month. We really don't have anything of note here. A large area in the subtropics of high pressure right over the western and central Atlantic front dropping southward. We continue to stay unsettled, though, in the eastern, southern, and midwestern parts of the United States. That's going to be our biggest problem here in the States, is the rain and the storms, not to mention the heat out west. But nothing really brewing beyond this. So we're going back to sleep for a couple of weeks. I do think as this high pressure region here builds eastward here in early August, and we see wind shear starting to relax, then we are going to see more development here in the main development region. We've still got at least 2.5 weeks before that potentially wakes up out of its slumber, but something I am going to be watching for you guys, of course. We'll have more videos talking about that. The European model, major storm hitting Ireland here Friday into Saturday. Here's Dawn. It is already trending weaker, drifting northward, may even be a remnant low here by early next week. But notice how as it turns back down into warmer waters and wind shear to the north relaxes here, we are going to see maybe a little bit of a burst of convection and re-strengthening for a little bit here next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Really nothing of concern coming off of Africa, and just fronts affecting the eastern and southern U.S. through next weekend. So, but look here on the European, major region of high pressure building in next weekend. And underneath the highs, we get the ridges over troubled water. We're certainly going to have to keep an eye on things down in here at the very end of July, and probably more likely early in August. On the Pacific side of things, we do have maybe another system developing here behind Calvin. That would be Dora. European, of course, is not bullish on it. The GFS model does have a system right here. By the time it's becoming anything, it's already pulling away from Mexico, so no threat to land there. All right. Don's forecast is we're pretty much at the peak of intensity here, then weakening here over the weekend. Big lightning bolt just outside my window. That's exciting to me, but I really hope I don't get hit here. I'm going to try to hurry up. We may see re-strengthening, though, around next Wednesday and Thursday, as a lot of the models show. There's the boom. So that was about 2 to 3 miles away from me. All right, closer to the U.S., big problems with flooding and some with severe weather as well, and heat in the west and in the south. Your eyes are drawn to this major complex of storms moving into Arkansas from eastern Oklahoma. There's another one moving into the Great Plains, and yet another one in the Dakotas. Here's the complex I'm dealing with right now in Raleigh. It's pouring rain, major storm last night in East Tennessee, and then we had another one blowing up very early this morning between southern Virginia and northern North Carolina. That's now building my way in Raleigh. We also have a complex building here with a remnant circulation over the Florida Panhandle. So all of these systems are slow moving. They're producing a lot of rain, and flash flooding certainly is going to be a concern. We also have some severe weather potential, especially over the central part of the country today. Marginal risk over the Great Lakes. So Chicago, Detroit, be on the lookout maybe for some watches and warnings later today. And the East Coast is going to be busy with these slow moving storms. Some of them could produce locally strong wind with them. Big wind threat later today over Kansas, heading into Missouri. Hail threat as well, but no tornado risk, at least a big tornado risk. Maybe a brief funnel does happen somewhere in here. But the main threat's going to be for another mesoscale convective complex that produces severe wind. And almost 4 million people are at risk of seeing significant winds over 74 miles per hour. That includes Kansas City, Wichita, Topeka, Kansas, just to the east of Garden City as well. Tomorrow, no areas of slight risk highlighted, but it will still be stormy. Do not let up your guard, even though we don't have a slight risk in the area that got hit yesterday. It's still marginal. That continues up into Canada. This could get upgraded to slight risk, but I think the bigger threat is heavy rainfall. Over 30 million people are going to be in that risk. All of the state of Ohio, eastern Kentucky and Tennessee, the Appalachians, western New York, western PA, eastern Michigan, and of course, Ontario is going to be continuing that stormy pattern. And that shifts slowly east into the northeast and New England here for Sunday. Next storm to keep an eye on may be affecting the Central Plains. An upgrade to slight risk is possible. I don't think we put 50 million people in a marginal risk not to see maybe some severe weather at some point. But here's the heavy rain threat today. Moderate risk for flooding over southwestern parts of New England, eastern New York, same places that had it this time last week will have potential flooding today. Slight risk for flash flooding over North Carolina, eastern Virginia, and the eastern shore. Also slight risk, which might have to get bumped up to moderate here over a good portion of Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, all the way down into western Florida. Nothing's moving quickly here, folks. We're just looking at more and more rain coming in places that just don't need it. Tomorrow, slight risk extends from Virginia up into Maine. Slight risk for flooding over the same exact area. Well, it's shifted a bit farther east towards the lower Ohio Valley and the western Tennessee Valley, but still a slight risk for flooding. Day 3, marginal risk for flooding from the northeast right on down through this, where this boundary is going to be, to a slight risk here in the high plains. Another big bolt right out my window. Sorry, I'm distracted here. I like thunderstorms, but I don't want to get hit either. I don't want my house to get hit. Let's just put it that way. And we'll continue to have risks for flooding in the exact same places here, the plains, the Ohio Valley, the northeast. Just a really bad pattern if you are in the northeast. Lots of rain coming here. We do have, in the shorter term, a flood threat over western Florida with rates of 1 to 3 inches per hour continuing this morning. We also have a significant potential for flooding over western Arkansas with this leading edge of a bow echo moving out of Oklahoma. Southern Arkansas a couple days ago had a foot of rain. I think this is a bit farther north, but Little Rock, keep an eye on things. Pine Bluff, keep an eye on things. Hot Springs as well. And here's a look at the European ensemble over the next 15 days, basically through the Saturday after next. We're going to be running above average on rain across the entire Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Gulf states, as well as the central part of the country. This is an ensemble average. Doesn't mean you're only going to see an inch or two more than average. Some places here could see well more than that in any heavy thunderstorm. And then dryness returns here over the upper Midwest and, of course, across Texas and the majority of Florida. And beyond that, very very much concerning that the next month is going to be super wet here across eastern Canada, the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and the Ohio Valley. And right into the heart of tropics season here. We definitely want to be on our toes here on the East Coast as we get later into August and September. Analogs do show us that tropical systems may want to favor coming up the East Coast here. We saw that with Isaias in 2020. And really, it's been since 1991 since we've had a major hurricane come up in this direction. But that was an El Nino year, and things looked very similar in the summer of 91 to what they do now in the eastern United States. So do keep an eye on things. Not promising that, of course, but something I'm going to be watching. Total rainfall from the ensembles. We're looking at many places are going to see 3 to 6 inches of rain widespread here across this region just through the end of the month of July. The NAM model in the shorter term, you see big rainfall here in the southern plains, big rain from Tennessee to the Carolinas and Virginia. It doesn't even include the Northeast. If you look at Oklahoma today, we're already getting that heavy rain, amounts potentially of 5 to as much as 8 inches over eastern Oklahoma, and that spreads in Arkansas. Here's the next one coming through Kansas tonight into early tomorrow, and just a really nasty weather pattern here as Oklahoma continues to get beat down. Certainly Arkansas and the Ozarks do as well. In the Carolinas, major rainfall in the Johnson City area overnight. Now we're seeing it here in Raleigh and on northward into southern Virginia, right around Carr Lake and Gaston here, 5-6 inches possible this morning. Heavy rain on the south side of Richmond into Virginia Beach today into tonight. We'll see that expanding south and eastward here into the coastal plain in the PD River area, as well as towards New Bern and Morehead City. We could see some very heavy rain and additional storms expected back across the Blue Ridge and Smokies here. Just a very wet pattern here through the weekend. A lot of places could see as much as a foot of rain, and we're seeing that here in Craven County and maybe Duplin County in North Carolina, according to the NAM. Farther north, we see that rain as well here the next couple of days. Catskills are getting another 4 to 8 inches of rain, Poconos 3 to 6, and southern Vermont, New Hampshire, you're going to puke when you see this, but another 3 to 6 inches of rain right on through the day on Sunday. Here is what the NAM shows. Just slow movers here, really not a lot of severe weather, but here is this afternoon. Same places here, Nepa up to New York, into western and central parts of New England. And the wet weather continues right on through the weekend here. We could see some severe weather. I know this morning we're seeing it around Trenton and Lawrenceville, New Jersey. We're going to see more storms, though, rolling into the area here slowly on Saturday night. And then this is Sunday morning here, moving through New York State up into western New England. I don't think this is a repeat of what we saw yesterday afternoon with all the severe weather, but slow movers, and some of them could produce some severe wind as well. Very busy this morning across the Carolinas, southern Virginia, then spreading southward into eastern and southeastern South Carolina, hitting the beaches this evening. South Carolina is going to be busy. We're going to see more storms here back across the Great Lakes tonight, and additional storm development expected tomorrow. And it could start early as well in the day over the coastal plain here tomorrow in North Carolina and South Carolina, with storms continuing right through tomorrow evening across the entire area. Maybe a break overnight, and then additional storm development is going to be possible here Sunday afternoon. Here's the big weather that we're talking about in Arkansas here. This is going to spread east into Tennessee and the southern Illinois here later today into tonight. We may have a little severe weather again in Chicago. And yes, I do think there is a potential for a tornado warning or two towards evening hours, 6 or 7 o'clock on the west side of Chicago and back towards about Rockford and DeKalb. As we head on into the evening, that spreads into southern Michigan, so be alert for those. Here's our next complex moving through the Ozarks region tonight. Maybe some flooding again overnight in northern Arkansas. And then tomorrow, the busy weather shifts east across the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys with heavy rain and maybe a bit of severe weather once again for some of these locations. We do need that rain, though. We don't need the severe weather. And then a quieter start to Sunday is expected. The Gulf states are going to get battered with heavy rain. Western Florida, this NAM is just doing terrible trying to pick up where it is exactly, but you can see going to be a busy day. More rain coming to Mississippi. We don't need to see that around Louisville, Mississippi. We've had flooding. That's going to be the case here again. Probably no widespread severe weather, but warnings certainly are possible. Tomorrow, northern Mississippi and Alabama have the best chance of heavy storms, and then Georgia towards the evening hours. That will all move eastward. Florida, not going to be too stormy, but a few isolated severe storms are possible. And then back across the plains, this is where our Most intense wind and hail is expected here as the day wears on. This morning's not going to be bad, but northern Kansas, we see another wave moving south and east, and Wichita is likely to get hit around 6 or 7 o'clock tonight. And then once again, the Sooner State is going to get hit. You know, it's sooner or later. In this case, it's sooner. Severe weather, though, expected here this evening before everything lifts out of here. More storms tomorrow afternoon, evening, New Mexico, eastern Colorado. Just not a great place for a solar farm here, because big hail certainly is going to be the threat once again. I wish I could cover more, but I've got a big storm battering me here, and I got to get going. I got a lot to do today, but I really do appreciate y'all's time. I have started with memberships. I'm working with YouTube to get those more visible to you guys, but those of you who have joined, thank you so much. I'm going to be doing something special for you here soon. This weekend, I'm going to start working on that. But if you are visiting for the first, second, third time, and weather's important to you, safety is important to you, then I really would appreciate it if you could consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and share with your friends as well, because weather is affecting all of us in our daily lives, and I want to make sure you're safe. That is my gift to everyone. That is to be a weather forecaster. It's something I've done for 20 years as a professional meteorologist. And I give all the glory to God who has given me this gift. We all are given gifts by God, whether or not we want to believe in him. But this is my gift to you all. And my calling is to share God's word. For 10 years, I've been a Christian. I'm not ashamed of it. Yes, it took me a long time to kind of come out of my shell and talk to other people about it, but I was given that gift of salvation through Jesus Christ, and I want to just share that gift with you guys as well. Going to share my screen again because I wanted to show you real quick. I think a lot of us talk about status. We want to feel important to the world. We want to feel like we've made a difference, that we've been successful. And I have put together an acrostic. It's a cross acrostic. Status stands for still too arrogant to understand salvation. And what this means is quite simply that people have pride, people have egos, people want to try to do everything themselves and not give God the glory and allow God into their lives to save them through his son, Jesus Christ. He has risen Jesus from the dead so that we can live eternally. In fact, that verse rings through many times in the New Testament. Acts 4, I had it up a second ago. Acts 4:10 through 13. Be it known unto you all that to all the people of Israel, that by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom ye crucified, whom God raised from the dead, even by him doth this man stand here before you whole. This is the stone which was set at naught of you builders, which has become the head of the corner. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. Now, when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, they perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men. They marveled and they took knowledge of them, and they had been with Jesus. Acts 4:12. No one will save us but the Lord himself through Jesus Christ. There's no other name given unto men by heaven. And yet a lot of us struggle with that. We seem to believe that eternally we're going to live or we're going to heaven, but how are we going to do that? In my opinion, it's arrogance. It's not necessarily not understanding this, because a lot of us, I think, understand this, but then we just don't choose to believe it. We believe that maybe we believe there's a God, but it's a different kind of God, or not a God who's given his son to die for us. Maybe we don't believe there's a God. Maybe we feel like, the science proves there isn't one. And there is an argument for that. Maybe we did believe in God one time, but we got around Christian people who sinned against us and turned us the wrong way, who judged us, who abused us, who told us the way we were living is untrue. Maybe you had an abortion. Maybe you did something, created a crime, and you just don't feel like you're worthy anymore. In my opinion, there is arrogance involved there. That's, again, you're leaning on your own understanding and not putting yourself out there and saying, maybe there is a God, and just maybe I can be changed. Maybe, just maybe, I can be saved through Jesus Christ. So not trying to beat you down with arrogance, because I'm speaking to myself here. And even as a Christian, I still believe on some days that I could try to do it all, but I can't. The Lord is there with us. He has created us. He has given us this gift. And I want to pray for you if you are struggling to accept it. That's what I want to do here today. That's my calling. It's just to share that simple message with you that whether or not you choose to believe in Jesus, there is that eternal gift for you. There is eternal life through his son in heaven. And we can live eternally, and the small amount of time we're here on earth to try to make a difference isn't going to matter in the end. The only thing that matters is whether or not you believe. So my question for you is, do you truly believe? Do you believe that more is out there for you? I really pray that you do. And I want to pray for you. And if you can pray for me as well, as I continue to struggle with this every day, I just wanted to be transparent. So again, if you are not a believer and you're still watching, I'm not judging you. Look, I've been there. I've been there for 30 years of my life, and it was a dark spot to be in. And I thought that I was on the path to success, but the world's success is different than heavenly eternal life. And I just wanted you all to learn that, to hear that from me, not learn that, but hear that from me as just one believer. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a minister of the word. I'm just somebody who believes in the Lord, and that gift has been given to me, and that somebody is here with me eternally, and that I'm going to be given that gift. And I pray that that's you as well. Have a lovely day. It is really dumping here in Raleigh. I got to go clean my gutters out when this storm leaves. Thank you all so much. God bless.